Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a river. It's 40,000 years ago, and across that water, you see them. Another group of humans. People you've never met. People who don't speak your language. People who could kill you, or trade with you, or become your family. You have maybe 10 seconds to decide what happens next. No shared words, no shared gods, no handshake because nobody's invented the handshake yet. Just you, them, and a river between two worlds. So what do? Here's the wild part. Your ancestors faced this exact moment thousands of times. And the choices they made, the tiny, clever, terrifying choices, those are the reason you exist today. Because if early humans had only ever fought each other, we'd have gone extinct a long, long time ago. The truth is, our ancestors were master negotiators. Long before contracts, long before language even fully existed. And how they pulled it off? It's honestly one of the greatest untold stories of what it means to be human. Now, before we cross that river together, do me one quick favor. If you're the kind of person who loves the stories nobody ever talks about, the hidden truths buried under history, then hit that subscribe button. Seriously, it's free, it takes 1 second, and it tells me you want more videos like this one. And if this makes you see your ancestors a little differently by the end, drop a like. That's the deal. That's all I ask. Okay, let's cross the river. Here's something we forget. For most of human history, meeting a stranger was the single most dangerous thing you could do. Think about it. Today, you pass hundreds of strangers a day. On the street, in the store, on the subway. You don't even notice them. But for your ancestors, a stranger wasn't a neutral thing. A stranger was a question mark. And question marks could get you killed. Anthropologists have a name for this. They call it the stranger problem. When two groups who've never met come face to face, there's no trust. There's no history. There's no reason to believe the other side won't just take your food, your tools, or your life. And yet, humans kept meeting anyway, kept trading anyway, kept mixing anyway. We know this because the evidence is literally written into the earth. Archaeologists have found seashells hundreds of miles inland. Obsidian, that's volcanic glass, that traveled over 500 miles from where it was mined. Beads, tools, materials moving across enormous distances, tens of thousands of years ago. Now, stop and think about what that means. That shell didn't walk inland by itself. It passed from hand to hand, from group to group, from stranger to stranger. Every single one of those exchanges was a negotiation. A moment where two nervous groups of humans decided, okay, let's not kill each other today. Let's trade instead. So the question becomes, how? How do you make a deal with someone who doesn't trust you and can't even understand you? Let's start with the oldest trick in the book, the gift. Now, we think of gifts as sweet, warm, no strings attached. But in the ancient world, a gift was a weapon, a strategy, a test. There's a famous idea in anthropology, first written about by a scholar named Marcel Mauss back in the 1920s. He studied gift-giving in traditional societies all over the world, and he noticed something strange. Everywhere he looked, gifts came with an invisible rule. If I give you something, you now owe me. Not in a mean way, in a deep, sacred, unspoken way. A gift creates a bond. It opens a debt. And that debt, that's the beginning of a relationship. That's trust with a receipt. So imagine our two groups at the river again. One side steps forward and lays something down. A tool, some food, a necklace of shells. And then they step back. That gift is saying so much without a single word. It's saying, I'm not here to fight. It's saying, look what I can make. It's saying, there's more where that came from, if you play nice. And now the other group has a choice. Take it and give nothing back? That's an insult. Maybe even a threat. Or reciprocate. Give something in return. And just like that, a relationship is born. Out of nothing. Out of two piles of stuff on a riverbank. This is how strangers became partners. One gift at a time. But here's where it gets really clever. because sometimes the two groups were so nervous, so afraid of each other, that they didn't even want to be in the same place at the same time. So they invented something extraordinary. Historians call it silent trade. And it might be the most beautifully simple idea humans ever came up with. Here's how it worked. One group would come to a known spot, a rock, a clearing, a riverbank, and lay out their goods. Then they'd leave, just walk away completely. The other group would show up, look at what was offered, and place their own goods next to it. Whatever they thought was a fair trade. And then they'd leave too. Then the first group comes back, and they look. If they're happy with the exchange, they take the goods and go. Deal done. If they're not happy, they leave everything untouched and wait, signaling, nope, not enough. Sweeten it. No words, no eye contact, no violence. A whole entire economy running on trust and empty space. Ancient writers describe this happening in Africa. Explorers reported seeing it centuries later. And think about how genius this actually is. These groups couldn't speak to each other. They didn't trust each other, but they still figured out a way to be fair, to bargain, to reach a deal, all without ever shaking a hand or saying a word. That's not primitive. That's brilliant. That's human beings solving one of the hardest problems there is. How do you trust someone you have every reason to fear? And solving it with pure, silent ingenuity. Okay, now let's talk about the biggest negotiation move of all. And it's one that's going to hit close to home, because you might literally be the result of it. Marriage. We think of marriage as love, as romance, as two people choosing each other. But for most of human history, marriage was diplomacy. Marriage was a peace treaty made of people. Here's the logic, and it's brutal but genius. If your group and my group are constantly at each other's throats, what's the one thing that could stop it? Family. Because you don't raid the camp where your daughter lives. You don't attack the people who are now your grandchildren's people. So groups exchanged something more valuable than shells or tools. They exchanged their own kids. Sons and daughters marrying into rival tribes. And suddenly, two enemies had a shared bloodline, a shared future, a reason to keep the peace. Anthropologists have long noticed that this practice, marrying outside your own group, shows up almost everywhere in human societies. And it makes total sense. Every marriage was an alliance. Every child was a bridge. A living, breathing knot tying two tribes together so tightly that war became too costly to even consider. And here's the mind-blowing part. Scientists studying ancient DNA have found that early human groups were far more mixed than we ever imagined. People weren't staying in tiny, isolated pockets. They were connecting, blending, weaving networks across huge distances. Which means your family tree, it's not a tree at all. It's a web built by thousands of these ancient alliances. Every negotiation, every gift, every marriage across enemy lines, they all pile up into one thing, you. But wait, we've skipped the hardest part. How did any of this happen without a shared language? Because let's be real, you can lay out gifts all day, but at some point you've got to communicate. You've got to say friend, not enemy. You've got to say this for that. So how? The answer is you already know it. You use it every single day without thinking. Your body. Long before words could carry meaning across a language gap, gestures could. An open palm, empty hands held up, showing you've got no weapon. A nod, pointing, a smile. And here's something incredible. A smile means the same thing in every culture on Earth. It always has. It's not something you learn. You're born knowing it. Anthropologists who've studied first contact situations between groups with no shared language found the same tools used again and again. Mining, pointing at objects, copying sounds, demonstrating, like actually showing how a tool works instead of describing it. And gestures of peace that seem to be nearly universal to our species. Think about that river again. One person steps forward, holds their hands open and empty, points to the goods, points to themselves, points to you, slow movements, a calm face. That's a full conversation, and not a single word was spoken. This is the deep truth people miss. We didn't need language to negotiate. Language came later. What we needed first was the will to connect and the creativity to find a way. And that was hardwired into us from the very beginning. Now, here's the last piece, and it's the one that makes all of it stick. A deal is only as good as the trust behind it. So how do you make a stranger believe you'll keep your word? Especially when there are no courts, no police, no contracts to enforce anything. You make it sacred. Our ancestors wrapped their most important negotiations in ritual. They'd share food together, and eating with someone was a powerful act. When you eat someone's food, you're saying, I trust you not to poison me. I trust you with my life, right now, in this moment. They'd share fire. They'd smoke together, dance together, perform ceremonies together. They'd swear oaths in front of whatever gods or spirits they believed in. Because a promise made to another human can be broken. But a promise made in front of the sacred, that felt unbreakable. Ritual turned a shaky, nervous exchange into something binding, something witnessed, something you couldn't just walk away from without consequences. Spiritual ones, social ones, real ones. And honestly, we still do this every single time. Think about it. A wedding is a ritual. Signing a contract with a fancy pen is a ritual. Shaking hands to close a deal, ritual. Raising a glass to make a toast, ritual. We haven't changed. We just swapped the campfire for a conference room. So let's go back to that river one last time. 40,000 years ago. Two groups of humans. No shared words, no shared world. Just fear and a whole lot to lose. And yet, they figured it out. They gave gifts. They traded in silence. They married across enemy lines. They spoke with their hands and their faces. And they sealed it all with ritual and shared meals and sacred promises. They chose connection over killing, over and over and over again, for tens of thousands of years. And here's the thing I really want you to sit with. Everything we call civilization, trade, diplomacy, alliances, treaties, even the awkward small talk you make with a stranger at a party, all of it started at that riverbank, with two scared groups of people deciding to reach out instead of raise a weapon. We are the descendants of the ones who chose to connect. The tribes that only fought, they vanished. The ones who learned to negotiate, to trade, to trust, to build bridges out of gifts and marriages and open hands, they survived, and they became us. So the next time you compromise with someone, the next time you make a deal or offer an olive branch or meet someone completely different from you and decide to be kind instead of afraid, know that you're doing the oldest human thing there is. You're standing at the river and you're choosing to cross it.